opposed to. People forget the difference between war.
Tell me about the 50 million hogs again, Joe. You want to kill 50 million people to save the tree?
Come on. You see what I'm saying? All you're doing is you're looking for blood. You're looking for fear. You're looking to sell death. You're looking to sell.
But you seem to have a peculiar fascination with
No. Here's
that seems to be follow you wherever
Let me give you this line. I'll give you the line of that. I'll give you the line in that thought right now. Since the Europeans came to this country, they have cut all the trees, they have butchered all the lakes, they've destroyed all the creeks, everything's turned into cement, they're tearing all the rainforest down, there'll be no wildlife left on the planet Earth. So if I'm standing out in the middle of the desert and I get out of jail and I see the desert's dying, the bees are dying, the birds can't live, the trees are dying, the smog is killing everything, and I say, wow, where's my life on this planet? Can I survive on this planet Earth? That's what I'm working for. I'm working for my survival on that piece of dirt. It took me 20 years to get out of these damn penitentiaries, to get down on that ground. Now that I'm on that ground, I'm thinking about surviving on that ground. I don't care about your society. The public's a bunch of assholes. When it comes down to it, they're for sale.
What do you care about, Joe?
I care about life.
But you care about life, but you'll kill 50 million people?
No, I didn't say I would kill anything. I'm reaping the heads in thought. I'm Jesus Christ. Whether you want to accept it or not, I don't care. I got the thought. I'm reaping it in thought. In thought. It's a thought. You see what I'm saying? In other words, the whole world is in a thought. The Pope sits in a thought. The handball's in a thought. Everything is in a thought. And I am in the thought of peace on earth.
How do you feel about the fact that you're going to spend the rest of your life there?
The rest of my life where?
Right here.
You guys are poor. You've been living 1,000 illusions, man. Rest of your life where?
In prison.
In prison. What prison? You got a prison in your mind?
Watching this program, say, listen, this stuff, they're just games. Dungeons and Dragons, they're just games. These rock musicians, it's just a song, it's games. The cartoons, they're just sort of make-believe. Are they really things like demons? Well, the answer is you better believe it. I want to tell you about a 17-year-old girl that I encountered a few years ago when a group of teenagers had joined my teenage daughter in holding what they called a coffee house in our garage. And one night, about 9:20 in the summertime, they came to me and they said, listen, there's a girl in here who's demon-possessed. We want you to help us. Well, I thought they didn't know what they were talking about, so I was slightly delayed, but finally I came out. And here was this girl crouched down like an animal. I was in the country up against a fence. And I said to her, what's the matter? She said, well, every time they pray, something inside of me says, get out of here. And I said, is that what it is? And she said, yes, I just can't stand this voice inside of me that just wants to explode when these people pray. Well, I said, would you mind if I prayed for you? And she said, oh, no, don't do that, don't. And I then said, well, I'm going to pray for you. And there were a couple of fellows standing around. I said, look, would you just please hold her hands? And I'm going to pray for her. And so I began to pray. And something happened to that girl. She was very small, slight of build, 17 years old. And she began to speak in another voice. And the voice said to me, you can't have her. She's mine. And I thought, what am I dealing with? This is demonic. And I said, Satan, that's a lie. She belongs to Jesus. You come out of her. And then this same voice coming through this little girl said, you can't have her. We've won. We've won. And I said, that's a lie. Jesus has won. You have been beaten. And then she was struggling, and she screamed at the top of her voice, let me go. And there was this unearthly scream coming out of her. And I said, God, help me, because I didn't know what else to do. And Jesus said, this kind comes out by prayer. And I began to pray. I said, Father, I need your help. In Jesus' name, Satan, let her go. And at that moment, her body went limp, and she opened her eyes. And I said, do you remember any of this? The answer was no. And I said, would you like to have Jesus come in your heart? She said, yes. I said, would you pray with me? She said, fine. And she prayed and received Jesus Christ into her heart, went back into this meeting, and later said it was the happiest night of her life. She had given an entrance to Satan a year before, and she was visiting friends in the state of New Jersey, and they had been involved in some kind of an occult procedure. Is it real? They spoke to me. I know it's real. And they came out of her, and she was happy and at peace. Now, where do you start if you've got that problem? You start very simply doing what everybody needs to do. Call upon the name of the Lord. And you need to say, Jesus, help me. I renounce the occult. I will have no more part of it. I surrender to you. Come into my life now and fill me with yourself. Set me free and cast out from me that which comes from Satan. Now, if you'll do that, the Lord will hear and answer. Just say, Jesus, help me, and then renounce the other that you've been involved in. And I want you to call us. I want you to share what God has done in your life. I want you to call in. If you need further prayer or help, it's 800-759-0700.
I'm Pierre-Philippe Mathieu, and I come from Belgium.
And what is the biggest problem for young people in Belgium?
It's the same as here, but they are not so widespread. You have punks, you have plays as Dungeons and Dragons.
Really?
So forth, yeah.
And what do people think of that?
It's a bad thing, of course, but they try to improve education to avoid such problems.
We have young people with us in this audience, Pat, from 14 different countries. So they're saying that these problems exist almost everywhere, whether it's drugs or the Dungeons and Dragons or other things that we've talked about.
Well, the question we all have to ask is, what's happening to our soul? What's happening to your soul? What is going to be done in your life? And are there influences trying to steal your soul? Well, perhaps no example of what can come along to warp the minds of youth stands out stronger than that of what's known as the violent punk rocker movement that originated in England. From London, CBN correspondent Stuart Bennett brings us one such example.
The music is violent, the drugs are violent, their dress is violent. The punk rock movement started over 10 years ago in direct rebellion against the rat race we call modern society. They embraced Marxism and anarchy as their philosophy, which in turn developed their lifestyle of violence.
The dress of a punk is to dress as violent as you can. So you'd have a black leather jacket that studded, and you'd wear studded knuckle dusters.
At first, it just simply was a game, just something to do for fun, to pass the time. But it was so intriguing that after a short time, it started to become more than just a fun pastime. It started to become more of an obsession.
Mike Palla had gotten hooked on Dungeons and Dragons, a controversial game of witchcraft where players take on the roles of both good and evil beings. The fascination lay in the use of his mind to invent the treasures and monsters that were a part of the game. Unfortunately for Mike, the border between reality and fantasy was too easily crossed, and before he knew it, his mind had become a prisoner of his own imaginary world.
First of all, my school work started slipping. I wasn't doing my homework anymore, and I was spending so much time with my friends that I was neglecting my family and neglecting other areas of my personal life.
Soon, every spare moment was spent either playing the game, buying paraphernalia, or reading and studying the Dungeons and Dragons literature.
These animals I identify with more than I do with the ways of humans. Humans are pretty stupid. Humans won't survive. Humans ain't going to survive. Not the way they're going.
Think they're going to destroy themselves?
Yeah, definitely. They're going to destroy every fucking thing. They're destroying everything. See, people don't realize how many... If you sit down and you started thinking people, it would take you 10 weeks to think up 200 million people, man. Do you know how many people that is? Now, you run out of food with 200 million people. You run out of oil with 200 million people. You run out of thought with 200 million people. You got a lot of meat there, man. That's a lot of meat to deal with, dig? You know, I'm reaching for perfection, just like we all reach for perfection. But my perfection is in the air, the water, the trees, and the wildlife, and it goes beyond my physical. You see what I'm saying? In other words, they can't understand, I've already gave this physical up, man. The physical's hanging down there on the courtroom. You know, if you want to interview me, why don't you go talk to to the DA, maybe he can make up some more lies for you, some more stories for you. And here's another thing that you people talk about. All these peace movement, all these demonstrators, they'll run out and demonstrate for a nuclear power plant, go home and turn electricity on. If you want to demonstrate for a nuclear power plant, don't use electricity. Does it make sense? You know what I'm saying? They want to demonstrate for something on one hand and get their faces up in the camera and like, look at me, I'm different, you know, or pay me to be somebody, you dig? And then on the other hand, they can't be somebody because they go home and turn the fucking electricity on and use the same fucking pollution. You dig what I'm saying? In other words, you can't protest cutting down trees with paperwork. You can't protest pollution riding around in automobiles. You dig? I told you 40 years ago, get back to the horse, man.
What's the best way to change things?
I get back to the horse. If you don't get back to the horse, there's going to be nothing left of you. Now, it's dawning in the minds of many. It's dawning in the minds of chemistry. It's dawning in the minds of biology. Anybody that wants to put order into the world, anybody that's got a brain that wants to put order into the world has got to stumble upon Hitler. Because Hitler started putting order into the world. And when he started putting order into the world, it threw him out, it overwhelmed him. It was too big for him. He couldn't do it, you dig? Nowadays, it's a different computer. If it's a different world, it's a different thought. Nowadays, you don't need all that explosive power. You can do it on your computers with your buttons and stuff, with your aids and baids, and with your biscuit berets and and Jackson wants to run to be president. Man, you better hope somebody wants to be president. You dig what I'm saying? But who in the hell would want to be? Can you conceive of what kind of brain would want to lead these fucking Rube Scoops out there? You know, because there's no communication with them. You dig? If you took a horsewhip and beat them, they still wouldn't understand what the hell you're talking about because there's no intelligence there, man.
There's too many people.
Oh man, yeah. You know, they'll pray for Hitler to come back. They'll wish he hadn't been here. They don't have the intelligence to change. Once you get them, they go, the rest of their life, They'll do that for a paycheck, You tell them, don't do that no more, and they go, There's no communication. You tell them, I tell them, stop doing that, and they'll go, I said, stop it, and they'll go, and you cut someone's fucking throat and throw blood in their face, and they'll go, You see what I'm saying? In other words, there's just no intelligence, man.
You don't have any hope for mankind.
Not on that level. Not on that level, I don't. No. That's not mankind. That's not intelligence. You know, it's not even beast. It don't have the intelligence of a zoo. You know.
The Trayvon Martin case and what's going on in Florida.
Well, I have a different take, Brian, on that. I believe that George Zimmerman, the overzealous neighborhood watch captain, should be investigated to the fullest extent of the law, and if he is criminally liable, he should be prosecuted. But I am urging the parents of black and Latino youngsters particularly to not let their children go out wearing hoodies. I think the hoodie is as much responsible for Trayvon Martin's death as George Zimmerman was.
What do you mean?
When you see a kid walking, Juliet, when you see a kid walking down the street, particularly a dark-skinned kid like my son Cruz, who I constantly yelled at when he was going out wearing a damn hoodie or those pants around his ankles, take that hood off. People look at you and what do they think? What's the instant identification? What's the instant association? It's those crime scene surveillance tapes. Every time you see someone sticking up a 7-Eleven, the kid's wearing a hoodie. Every time you see a mugging on a surveillance camera or they get the old lady in the alcove, it's a kid wearing a hoodie. You have to recognize that this whole stylizing yourself as a gangster, you're going to be a gangster wannabe, well, people are going to perceive you as a menace. That's what happens. It is an instant reflexive action. Remember Juan Williams, our colleague, our brilliant colleague, he got in trouble with NPR because he said Muslims in formal garb at the airport conjure a certain reaction in him or a response in him. That's an automatic reflex. Juan wasn't defending it. He was explaining that that's what happened when he sees these particular people in that particular place. When you see a black or Latino youngster particularly hoodie on the street, you walk to the other side of the street. You try to avoid that confrontation. Trayvon Martin's, God bless him, he's an innocent kid, a wonderful kid, a box of Skittles in his hand. He didn't deserve to die, but I'll bet you money, if he didn't have that hoodie on, that nutty neighborhood watch guy wouldn't have responded in that violent and aggressive way.
What about the fact, the people of New York, a couple of nights ago, they had 1 million hoodie march.
You cannot rehabilitate the hoodie. You're not going to... I understand that the reaction might be overzealous or even irrational in some extent. When you look at the statistics, it may be, but you're not going to rehabilitate the hoodie. You're not going to...
Stop wearing it.
Stop wearing it. Don't let your kid... You know the old Johnny Cash song, don't take your gun to town, son, leave your gun at home. There is some things that are almost inevitable. I'm not suggesting that Trayvon Martin had any kind of weapon or anything, but he wore an outfit that allowed someone to respond in this irrational, overzealous way, and if he had been dressed more appropriately, I think, unless it's raining out or you're at a track meet, leave the hoodie home. Don't let your children go out there.
He needs me to be violent because he needs his ass kicked. He's begging somebody to kill him, so he needs me to be a killer because he wants to die and go to heaven and be with Jesus. It's got nothing to do with me. I don't respond to it. I just shine it on, put it on another world, man. It doesn't exist. In the planet I live on.
What planet is that?
The one that I live on.
Do you think that this world, San Quentin, has any relation to the world outside?
This world, San Quentin, is where all the children of God are. This is where you keep all your children that you don't want. The ones that you get to carry the heavy load.
You know what your questions? We have a thing going on with that.
I just talk natural on the line anyway, man. I told you, see, nothing I do is right, man.
It's all right.
Unless I stay in a cell. They crowd me and I got this little space. My life is bigger than this little space. I live in the desert. I live in the mountains, man. I'm big. My mind is big. But everybody's trying to crowd me down and push me down and make me into all these little things that they need me to be. And that's not me at all, man. That's not me. I killed nobody. I broke no law.
You broke no law?
I broke no law. I didn't even get to put on a defense, man.
But Charlie, you were in prison half your life.
So what?
Why?
I didn't have no parents. When you don't have any parents and you got nobody, there's no place else to take you off the street and throw you somewhere. I've been in here since I was 9 years old.
I know.
Yeah, because I didn't have any parents.
But then why did you start taking other people's property? Why did you start messing with other people's space?
I reflect the will of God, son. You can have anything I got.
What God is that, Charlie?
Yeah, the will of God. Whatever you want to call it, that up, down, again, down. Call it Jesus, call it Muhammad, call it Boogie Bites, call it nuclear mind, call it blow the world up, call it your heart, call it whatever you want to call it. It's still music to me. It's there. It's the will of life.
Why are 20,000 Americans being killed every year, Charlie?
Because the district attorneys are selling your blood, man.
I don't understand that.
The way you go to court, they need a conviction. They need criminals, man. They need people to lock up in cages. If they didn't have people to lock up in cages, man, they wouldn't be able to sell more fear to the public. And they sell more fear to the public, and all the more women, they love to buy that fear. They just lay back and watch that fear and read them detective magazines.
Well, what makes the knife or knife, the shoot or shoot?
Society, the reflections of a child.
But what about the responsibility of the person who's doing it?
What person is doing it?
Susan Atkins?
Susan Atkins is only doing what the society raised her up to do.
Rocked to my socks and rocked absolutely senseless. The language of the kids around me was unreal. Every other word was an F or an S. When one of the rock stars appeared in a G-string, the crowd went wild. The fellow was 99 7/8% naked. Then the kids around me started to light up their joints. I lost track of the number of people that they had to carry out. Some were unconscious. I can't believe this. Others were taking off their clothes all around me. On the way home, I told my daughter, you'll never go to another rock concert as long as you live in my house. Here's some advice I'd like to give every parent. This is from this mother's heart to you. Don't ask your kids what goes on at their performances. Go and see for yourself. If you're going to let your daughter or your son go, you better know what's going on. Jack, this is appalling, isn't it?
Yes, and not only that, but
they show these same programs, the rock concerts, on television, and it's just like all hell was let loose. In fact, you may not like what I'm going to say, but I'm going to say it anyway because I'm not afraid to speak out. I think that the music in hell for eternity be some of this rock music with all its vulgarities and all of its sexual innuendos. And here they were stripping themselves, and a fellow running around in a little G-string. It reminds me of the wild man of Gadara in Mark chapter 5 who was possessed of a demon running around in the graveyard naked and cutting himself with stones and screaming, demon possession. But for you Christians, please obey your Bible. Sing a new song unto the Lord, Psalm 33:3. He's put a new song in my mouth, praise to my Lord, Psalm 40, verse 3. You can tell a spirit-filled Christian from one who just professes by what they sing. Be filled with the Spirit. What's one of the signs? Speaking to yourselves in psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs, singing and making melody in your heart to the Lord. Colossians 3:16, teaching and admonishing one another in psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs, singing with grace in your heart to the Lord. You get a dose of the Holy Ghost, filling you, controlling you, and you'll be singing a new song and get rid of all of those stinking rock records.
You know, Jack, something happened right here in Birmingham, Michigan. Irate Birmingham theater goers speak out. We left the first act, writes a Livonia couple, because of the gross innuendo and vulgar language and because the Lord's name was taken in vain so frequently. Please refund my $14, demands a woman from Royal Oak. I need to buy some soap to wash out my ears. A show for the whole family, she says? Sure. For low-class, ignorant, filthy bores. Maybe.
Right on, sister.
Oh, that's quite an article there.
Take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. One of God's commandments, Exodus 20, verse 7. People have to walk out of these rotten theaters because of hearing the name of their God and the name of their Jesus. And by the way, Jesus is my God, blasphemed and taken in vanity. Not only that, but Ephesians 4:29 says, let no corrupt communication proceed in your mouth. As I already quoted, if there be any virtue, if there any be praise in things, think on these things. First, Philippians 4:8. We need to get our minds saturated with good things.
You know, Jack, just quickly I want to say that a lot of people are seeing it like you're saying it tonight.
Oh, right.
Glamour magazine, which is one of the magazines for women, of course, found that their readers are fed up with television trash. 80% said TV has become too trashy for their taste. And then Ohioans say that the same thing. In fact, let me see. I believe that there was a poll there, and 74% said we want television changed. I could just go on and on and on.
80%, 74%. It goes on and on, yes.
Yes.
The whole thing's a fairy tale. You say the whole thing is make-believe.
Yeah, that's his helter-skelter. It wasn't mine.
The body of Sharon Tate is make-believe.
That's make-believe.
Make-believe.
That's make-believe to the people that went in there and did what they did.
Mm-hmm. And who were those people? But you know who they were.
Sure I know who they were.
They were with you at the Spahn Ranch. They were part of this thing called, if not the Manson family or the Manson cult, the Manson Ranch. Call it what you will.
So then, what?
And Tex Watson testified in a court of law that you told him, go to the house that Terry Melcher used to live in and kill those people in a most gruesome way. A man that was once your associate said that of you, and now you sit here and say that's not true, that's all make-believe?
You got a stone wall there. Why don't you take it down a little bit? Look here. I'll explain something to you. Tex took the witness stand, and this is record, and he said, I don't know whether I'm Charlie Manson or my mother. There's different colors on different people's backs doing different things. It's a different world. I love the world I live in, too, just like Reagan loves the world he lives in.
You love the world you live in.
Most assuredly, it's me.
You love all the pain that you've caused people, all the anguish you've caused.
I don't know pain. I don't know pain. I have no depth of pain. I have no depth of suffering. I don't know ridicule. I don't know all the bad things. I haven't been punished by you all my life since I was 10 years old. I've been in every reform school you got across the country and used to lay down and have to get my ass whipped till I couldn't walk. Tell me about some pain.
And that's our fault. That's all those people.
No fault. Make strong, good pain. Understand pain. Not bad. Pain's not bad. It's good. It teaches you things. It teaches you things. Like when you put your hand in fire, you know not to do that again. Yeah. Yeah, I understand that.
But how come you didn't...
That's the reason I never stick my hand in fire.
Oh, but, excuse me, you've been putting your hand in the fire since you were a little boy.
I have?
You just told me a couple of minutes ago that out of 47 years, you've spent 34 of them behind bars. Now, if that isn't even putting your hand in the fire, I don't know what is.
What year was that?
The year is not important. What's important is you just say that you learn by pain not to experience again. Don't put your hand back in the fire. Why you've been in and out of prisons for the last for 34 of your 47 years? You call that normal behavior, Charles? Is that something that you're proud of?
No, never. Well, I never thought I was normal. Never tried to be normal. Normal runs in a little rut down there. I don't know nothing about being normal. I've been in jail all my life, man. I've lived on a handball court. This guy raised me up. All the men in the joint raised me up, told me what to do, what was right and wrong, told me when to sit down, stand up. I just did everything I was told. You know, and I got to the end of it, and I just turned around and said, wow.
All right, now that's hard.
You know, and then I went outside, and all these little kids got a hold of me and said, we want to stop the Vietnam War, and we want to do this. What? The war? I don't know what's happening. I've been in jail all my life, man. I never went to vocational. You ever see me in vocational training, rehabilitation? Never played no rehabilitation. I sweep the floor in the kitchen. Go out and play handball. I'm still 10 years old in your world. In your world, I'm still a kid. I'm not going to grow up. I'm not going to go to college.
How old are you in your world?
Forever. Since the breakfast. I can't remember what.
I don't know what that means. Come on, off the space shuttle, Charles.
Yeah, it's off the space shuttle.
How old are you in your world?
How old am I? I'm as old as my mother told me. How's that?
Your mother. Tell me about your mother. What did your mother tell you?
My mother told me when she worked on death row and they took that dude in to hang him and his head popped off and went down them 13 stairs and rolled over by her. It scared the you know, so I said, wow, that sure is a far-out trip, Mom. So then when I got up on death row in cell 13 for 9 counts of murder, 1969, and I looked at her fears, that guy's head popping off that hangman's noose, and I said to myself, my goodness, what the hell am I doing here? I didn't want to come here. I didn't break the law. The judge knew that, but the people didn't want to hear it. The judge knew it. He washed his hands. He said, I know it, but what can I do? People want this.
The judge never said that.
Yeah.
Judge never said
That's what oldest is.
No, judge didn't say that.
He got off and shook their hands, didn't he?
Judge did not say that he washed his hands.
He was a flying tiger, man, for Madam Chiang Kai-shek. I just wrote a letter.
Judge didn't say that you were innocent, Charles.
Innocent?
Let's go back to your mother.
Innocent? Wait a minute. Let's get back to that word, innocent. You're so white and pure?
Judge didn't say you were innocent.
Are you innocent?
Innocent of what?
Oh, that's what I'm saying.
None of us are innocent.
Yeah, just because you're convicted in a courtroom doesn't mean you're guilty of something.
What does mean you're guilty?
Well, you know you're guilty.
And how do you feel about yourself? Tell me about you.
I feel pretty good.
You know, you were sentenced to the gas chamber and then they modified the death penalty. Were you happy when that was done?
Was I happy when what was done?
When you found out that you weren't going to the gas chamber.
You're talking about dying. Now, it gets me nervous.
Why?
Did you have any thoughts about something? Was you wanting to go anywhere?
Were you happy when you found out you weren't going to go to the gas chamber, Charles?
I knew I wasn't going to go to the gas chamber because I hadn't done anything wrong.
You scared to die?
Sometimes I feel I'm scared to live. Living is what scares me. Dying is easy. Getting up every day and going through this again and again is hard. See, I'm carrying a heavy thought. See, the thought I'm carrying is very heavy. Like I'm on a football team and everybody's. I'm a little guy. I don't have no home team. You got all the home. I got one cheerleader or one coach. See, you got me at a disadvantage because I'm on your ground. See. So, and this is your street, I reckon. You got the cameras and the money and the things. But you can believe me that Bully Osie's had you all on a rib. And all them guys that sold you most of that stuff sold you a bunch of things that weren't real. Not to me. We used to have games we would play. On the movie set, we would take on different people. I'd be Riff Raff Rackus. and Steve would be John Jones would just come in from Minneapolis and driving the truck. And we'd just take other people and play act other people. And then we lost track of who we were. And it went off and do other dimensions and levels of thought and understanding and comprehension that were beyond most people's minds, functions, computers, data. So all I did was watch and learn everything I could from everybody I ever met. Then when I got out of prison, I just walked around. I didn't tell nobody to do nothing. I said, do what you want to do. Don't tell me what to do. I don't like people telling me what to do. They said, I come from a place where they told me what to do all my life. You know, I want to find out what to do for myself, you know. I never did. Not yet. But I was going to take a trade one of these days, maybe learn to be a welder or something. Till I can get to the front gate anyway.
A student came out and said, it's two guys from the Trenchcoat Mafia. Well, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold weren't part of that group. They wore black trench coats, as did some other kids, and there was a picture in the yearbook. But later on, it comes out, not only were Harris and Klebold not members, this group was just a bunch of kids posing for a yearbook picture. And yet that picture in the yearbook was broadcast around the country. And to this day, many people still think the Trenchcoat Mafia, this group of outcast students, had something to do with the massacre. And indeed, that's not the case.
Mr. Thomas, were there any warning signs at all that anybody picked up? I know, obviously, in hindsight, people have said to you, oh, my goodness, I should have told somebody about the fact that these kids did this or said this or that, whatever.
Well, you know, I think there were warning signs, but the warning signs that we see in a lot of kids today. These kids were isolated from the mainstream. They dressed unusually, but, you know, for any of us that have been in the system for very long, or I mean even just citizens, you see kids today and they don't dress the same way that we used to dress, and they have pierced body parts, and it's very difficult to really see what those signs were that we could predict this behavior.
To blame. All the experts had an answer.
Angry, heavy metal subculture. Where were the parents?
Violent movies.
South Park.
Video games.
Television. Entertainment. Satan.
Cartoons. Zoom. Society.
Toy guns. Drugs.
Shock rocker. Marilyn Manson.
Marilyn Manson.
Marilyn Manson.
Marilyn Manson.
Marilyn Manson.
Marilyn Manson has canceled the last 5 dates of his U.S. tour out of respect for those lost in Littleton. But the singer says artists like himself are not the ones to blame.
This is perhaps the sickest group ever promoted by a mainstream record company.
After Columbine, it seemed that the entire focus on why the shootings occurred was because the killers listened to Marilyn Manson.
If you were to talk directly to the kids at Columbine or the people in that community, what would you say to them if they were here right now?
I wouldn't say a single word to them. I would listen to what they have to say, and that's what no one did.
I don't understand why you pick Catholicism, why you go with the cross, with God, with the Pope. To me, she has lost her religion because of listening to him as well as other musicians. She's not a Catholic anymore. She has no religion anymore, and that's what's bothering me.
Well, you know, it could be because it was your religion and maybe it wasn't supposed to be hers.
Okay.
And that most children don't understand what you're doing and why you're using the F word and why you're acting bizarre. And this can be very, very troubling to children who don't have direction, who don't have responsible parents.
Anything can be misinterpreted. People can look at Christ on a cross and think, this is an image of murder, this is violent, this has sexual imagery in it. And it's just, I think it's my job as an artist to be out there pushing people's buttons and making them question everything. And I respect you for challenging me, and that's why I came on the show. You gotta feel like, but let me say something. say something now. I've particularly on this record, with the imagery that I use, I tried to look at the things that I was taught growing up about Christianity in a different way. You know, I looked at the image of Christ on the cross and the story of him as someone who was a revolutionary with dangerous ideas, and I started saying to myself, oh, I can relate to this story now. I'm not going to dismiss it, but I'm going to interpret it in a different way. So everybody should, you have to be open-minded. I'm sure when you were young, you didn't want to listen to what your parents were trying to tell you to believe in. You know, she's going to find her own. Maybe someday she'll become a nun. You don't know. The two byproducts of that whole tragedy were violence and entertainment and gun control. And how perfect that was the two things that we were going to talk about with the upcoming election. And also then we forgot about Monica Lewinsky, and we forgot about the president was shooting bombs overseas, yet I'm a bad guy because I've sang some rock and roll songs. And who's a bigger influence, the president or Marilyn Manson? I'd like to think me, but I'm going to go with the president.
What's your message? What are you trying to get across in the lyrics to these songs?
It's always about being yourself and not being ashamed of being different or thinking different. I try and take everyone's ideals, common morals, flip them around, make people look at them differently, question them so that you're not always taking things for granted.
For example, you do rip pages out of the Bible in your concert. You do wipe your ass with the American flag. Some of these things you have to admit are controversial.
Absolutely. I mean, they're designed to make people think, but the point with the Bible or flags is to say it's only as valid as you make it in your heart. A piece of paper,
perception, isn't it, Marilyn?
a piece of paper or a piece of cloth doesn't mean anything. It's what you believe. And I want people to think about what they believe. I want them to consider if everything they've been taught, if that's what they want to believe or that's what they've been told that they have to believe.
You're a pretty well-spoken guy, yet in your records you use a lot of F-word, a lot of swearing and this and that. Again, is it necessary?
Sometimes. I think sometimes when you're making a point, I don't think that my lyrics are overlaced with profanity because I myself don't speak using a lot of profanity in normal conversation. But I think when you're making something aggressive and you need to get a point across, if you're angry, sometimes profanity is necessary. It's better to use a curse word than to hurt somebody else, I find. But I think if parents spent more time trying to censor rock music and art and movies and things like that, they spent the time teaching their kids to appreciate and understand those things and to know what's right and what's wrong. I think that's more time spent, more value.
You can take some of your lyrics as, you know, you'll understand when I'm dead. I mean, disturbed kids could take the lyrics and say, you know, when I'm dead, everybody's going to know me.
Well, I think that's a very valid point, and I think that that's a reflection of not necessarily this program, but of television in general. If you die and enough people are watching, then you become a martyr, you become a hero, you become well-known. So when you have things like Columbine and you have these kids that are angry and they have something to say and no one's listening, the media sends a message that if you do something loud enough and it gets our attention, then you will be famous for it. Those kids ended up on the cover of Time magazine. The media gave them exactly what they wanted. And that's why I never did any interviews when that happened, when I was getting blamed for it, because I felt that I would be contributing to what I found to be reprehensible.
So you don't believe that your songs reflect any kind of suicide wish or anything like that?
No, I feel that my songs talk about getting through feelings like that.
No, it's not. It's responsible because I'm telling them the truth.
No sex.
And we haven't told people the truth.
You're making an
We haven't told
suppression
people
of
the truth.
sex throughout history that's made people so violent.
Yeah, no, wait a minute.
That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
If you feel guilty, if you're feeling guilty about having sex,
I've never known anyone who
everybody wants to have sex. The world is created through sex.
The irresponsible assumption
this is true, and God
the one that you made is that teenage children are going to have sex no matter what. That's not necessarily true at all.
No, it's not.
Oh, Gordon.
It's not. You know what?
I had a lot of teenage companions when I was a teenager. Really? And they were not all running around getting laid.
But he was also in prison, so he's got a different.
Well, he was in school and going in a very dark direction that we really didn't understand. We couldn't connect to it. So we pulled him out of school, and he's now homeschooled. And
I
feel you can't criticize something you don't know anything about, so I went to the concerts with him. I'm convinced that Marilyn Manson is a true rock and roll star. He's a star! Thank you. I believe in him. And he's helped my son be himself through a lot of adversity and crap. And I know that goes for everybody in this room.
If you want to blame rock music for things, think about what the Bible's done. What about Heaven's Gate or Jim Jones or the Ku Klux Klan? What they do in the name of Christ.
They totally defy the Bible.
Yeah, but
the Bible says
well,
if you love God and hate your brother, you're a liar and God is not in you. Obviously, you have not read that.
No, I've read the Bible. I'm just saying what people do in the name of the Bible
is a liar and God isn't in him. So, you know, if we're going to quote the Bible, you complain that people take you out of context. Don't take the Bible out of context.
He's taking Friedrich Nietzsche out of context. That's what But the Bible certainly has been the inspiration for an amazing amount of un-Bible-like activity.
I like the Bible. I'm just saying I don't like the way people misuse it just as much as people could misuse it.
If you like it, then be the standard and do it. That's the problem.
I like it as a book, just like I like the Cat in the Hat.
Say there's something and they're not.
Do you know that the day that Columbine happened, the United States dropped more bombs on Kosovo than any other time during that war?
I do know that, and I think that that's really ironic, you know, that nobody said, well, maybe the president had an influence on this violent behavior. No, because that's not the way the media wants to take it and spin and turn it into fear, because then you're watching television, you're watching the news, you're being pumped full of fear. There's floods, there's AIDS, there's murder. Cut to commercial. Buy the Acura, buy the Colgate. If you have bad breath, they're not going to talk to you. If you got pimples, the girl's not going to fuck you. And it's just it's a campaign of fear and consumption. And that's what I think that it's all based on, is the whole idea that keep everyone afraid and they'll consume.
What standards do you have and where do you draw the line as far as what is good and what is evil?
I have basic principles that kind of exist in all religions, even Christianity.
Such as?
Well, the fundamentals, you know, you don't kill people, you know, a basic good person.
Okay, so
probably the same as yours.
No, they're not the same. Guarantee they're not the same. You are a minister of the Church of Satan.
I'm not a minister of it.
Okay, because I don't know. Rolling Stone, I've heard that you were into the Church of Satan. I assume that you read the Satanic Bible by Anton LaVey.
I read both Bibles.
Okay.
Christian Bible too.
Right. Okay, and we know that the Bible has 10 commandments, not 10 suggestions.
Right.
And there's one commandment in the book of Satan. What is that commandment?
I don't know. I don't preach the Gita Bible.
You don't?